So the book really impressed me. The life impressed me. And this woman, Charlotte, who had given me the book, saw that, and she said, well, why don't you contact him? Why don't you write to him? And I said, well, how would I do that? And she said, well, I'll get you his address. And in fact, she did. And he was traveling, but somehow she got the address. I wrote to him and explained. She said, oh, I remember saying, well, what do I say? And she said, well, you think of something. And I said, sir, my name is Bill Angelos, and I am in television. Have you ever considered using television as a medium for your message? And in about 2 weeks, I got an answer. And the answer was, thank you very much, sir, for writing. Yes, we are interested in the possibility, but we have no idea what we might possibly do. Perhaps, he said, I will be coming to the United States in a few months. Perhaps we could meet and talk about it. And that's what happened when he and his associate came to the United States, and they were stayed in Malibu. I was in Beverly Hills at the time, so I got a telephone call, went out, and met Krishnamurti.
What did you saw when you enter? What was the scene?
Well, I remember he actually opened the door. There was something about his presence which was difficult to explain, especially since he was wearing sneakers and jeans and a blue sport shirt. Lovely face, but we immediately were very, very friendly. There was an extended friendship in the way he extended his hand, invited me in. We walked into this lovely, beautiful living room that overlooked the Pacific Ocean, and we sat in 2 chairs much like this. And he said, tell me about yourself, sir. Which really surprised me, because in Hollywood, no one asks you to talk about yourself. You generally talk about your own self. But I could tell he was genuinely interested, so I explained to him who I was, and I was in television. And we got to the subject of perhaps using TV, and he said, well, what do you have in mind? Well, I said, well, maybe it might be possible to videotape you with a small group of people talking, rather than in the thousands of people, in an intimate setting. And he said, perhaps that could be arranged. The only thing that I asked, he said, was that the cameras not be obtrusive. So this was 1969 by then, and this was long before video. All the cameras were big at the time, even before VHS. So I had to look around, and I found a prototype of a portable camera that would be unobtrusive. And that's what I brought to show him that this is what we'd use. He said that would be fine. And what resulted was a series of 8 conversations over a period of 4 weekends. And that was the first time that Krishnamurti ever was videotaped. And they became known as the Malibu tapes, which are now quite famous.
Are they available now? Are they accessible, the Malibu tapes?
Some of them are. There's an interesting story there, too. For one reason or another, after the tapes were shot, someone put them in a closet and forgot about them. And they were rediscovered 25 years later. And a special machine had to be built to reproduce the images. And the first 2 videotapes were lost. I mean, they were destroyed, but the audio still is retained. But the others are there. So that's the way they're sold. There's audio and videotapes.
How did you meet David Bohm?
Through Krishnamurti. I should tell you, by the way, as a result of those 4 weekends, we developed a friendship. And I think it should be said that this man was a very gentle human being. People generally think of individuals like this as being, and most of them are pompous or, above this was quite the opposite. Very gentle, very friendly. So we became friends. And about 4 years, I was in 1973, I was in Israel, the occasion being, it was the 25th anniversary of Israel, and I was producing and writing a television special for the 25th anniversary. And in fact, Golda Meir, who was then Prime Minister, was my executive producer. And the show went very well. It was a weekend production, and I realized that I had some time before going back to the States, and I thought that perhaps I might go and visit Krishnamurti in England. He has a school, Brockwood Park in England. I knew he was there, but I didn't have a telephone number. I did, however, have what was known then as a Krishnamurti bulletin. It was a periodic that was brought out, and in the back there was a series of telephone numbers of Krishnamurti offices, and there was one for Jerusalem. So I got a cab, went down to the office in Jerusalem and walked in, and there was a very nice, affable gentleman sitting behind a desk. And I explained who I was, and did he perhaps have a telephone number for Krishnamurti? And he said, well, no, I don't. However, my brother-in-law is a trustee at the school there, and perhaps we can call my sister, who will convey the message to her husband. And this was actually Sarah Boehm's brother that I was talking to. And she called Sarah. Sarah called David Boehm, and Boehm asked Krishnamurti, and Krishnamurti said, come ahead. And when I went to Brockwood, we actually, when I got there, I remember walking in and spending the first few minutes there in the classroom with Krishnamurti and some students, which is an experience unto itself. But then he invited me to lunch, and at lunch, David Boehm was sitting there. And he introduced us. And I really don't remember saying anything more than hello at the time. I had no idea who he was. I would only find out later that he was a theoretical physicist. And that meant nothing to me at the time. It was only after a period of years of seeing him again at various other Krishnamurti talks that we began to develop an acquaintanceship, if you will, and then a friendship. And that's how it began. And the more I got to know him, I started studying or reading some of his material, which was, I'm certainly nowhere near a theoretical physicist. The one thing that I did recognize, however, was that he wrote about quantum physics in such a way that he tried, certainly mathematics was a part of it, but he tried to explain what was going on in the English language. Not only that, I began to sense that there was something very visible about what he was talking about. And it was at that time that the word multimedia suddenly emerged. And I literally fell in love with the word. What a wonderful word that is, to use all of the media at the same time to communicate. So I asked David if he might be interested in perhaps approaching a biography of his work, but in a multimedia format. And he said that was a very interesting idea. And that's when our friendship became a work relationship as well. And so we got to be quite close. And I think you've heard some of the tapes that have happened, the audio tapes that led to the videotape that's now online on my website that I believe you saw, which is why you called me.